Hello there. My name is Rania Stewart, and I'm the newest addition to the Gartner HCM analyst team, specifically covering the talent acquisition and talent development space. And I'm really looking forward to spending the next 30 minutes with you to take a unapologetically pragmatic look at the role skills AI can and is playing in upskilling the workforce. And by pragmatic, I mean nothing in these slides is bleeding edge or hypothetical in nature. You'll see in a few moments the way I've organized my slides and our time together. The three sub-themes, when I take a look at them together, they probably make up a good third of the calls that I take with client organizations like yours. Questions clients ask me like, what tech is out there that we don't have to help us improve what fill in the blank, right? Time to fill, quality of hire, our resume bottleneck, our leaky bucket that is retention, and our lacking onboarding experience. So I don't know how many IT and HR leaders alike say to me, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but they say, Rania, we're painstakingly bringing in talent on one hand, and with the other, right, we need to provide them the right complement of tools to really be able to meet the flex demands of work. And so I suspect some of this resonates with you too. Of course, every organization I connect with has their own nuances that we work through, but my hope is that there are some a short list of key value messages that you can readily take away from this presentation. So with that, let's dive in. So what's the net of how trends and dynamics today are converging to inform both the CHRO and the CIO's people agenda? So I'm not sure any of these would surprise you, whether you're talking about driving innovation, executing business transformation, enabling collaboration and empathy-based management. It can go on, right? Long-term workforce resilience, consequential accountability, agility, operational efficiency. And notice I skipped over the one in the middle, right? The one right here, use a more dynamic approach to manage shifting skill needs. And so I'm not just highlighting this because it's today's topic, but rather it's today's topic because this bullet item is not like the others, right? If someone said to you, which one of these priorities could make the most impact on improving the outcomes of the others, this one would be it, right? It's much more of a how than a what. And so in instructional design speak, we would call that priority an enabling skill, right? It's helping move the needle on the other priorities listed here. And so said differently and often, it's a platform, right? It's not a silo. Or at least there's a growing body of evidence that it can be if you set it up for that success across your people strategies and technologies. Similarly, let's drill down and take a look at the top recruiter leader priorities. Again, I don't think many of these would surprise you at all. Many of you are living with some variation of this list in your 2022, 2023 goals for your talent acquisition function. But I challenge you, right, to maybe see this list a little bit differently. How would things look different in your people, your process, your technology strategies if number 2 here wasn't just another priority, but the one you used as a lever to enable the other 9 that you have on this list? And so it won't get you necessarily all the way on all of those priorities, but perhaps some of the way on all of them. And so food for thought here as I lay context for our discussion today. This slide is a conceptual visual I use to create that 39,000-foot backdrop to where talent acquisition tech fits into talent management and HCM suites, and now expanding into all people technologies. And so the sea of vendors and the specific angles they take to solving variations of similar, but not quite the same business problems, right? And certainly not in the same way, can be incredibly confusing, particularly in the talent space. So zooming out, getting some of this much needed perspective of what fulfills which roles in your tech stack becomes incredibly valuable. And so if you were to double click on the left-hand side of this visual, you'd get something that looks more like this, right? It's a slightly slightly deeper look at the components of that talent acquisition tech stack generically. And some are more core, right? Like your ATS function. And nowadays your CRM is pretty essential as well, right? To help convert potential candidates to engaged applicants. But I want to call out down here the CRM plus at the bottom as it relates to a growing trend of applying skills AI to both the front end candidate experience, right, in the form of resume screening software, as well as in the back end of your employee experience, right, through internal talent marketplaces, both of which we'll touch upon more. All right, so there are three key themes I'd like to walk us through in this pragmatic approach of looking at skills AI. And so the three themes being dynamic skilling, dynamic work, and dynamic networks. So dynamic skilling, right? A hot topic on its own at Cultivate for sure. So by 2022, right, which is where we're at now, 29% of the skills that were present in an average job posting back in 2018 will no longer be needed. And so this is a Gartner prediction made a while back. I was hoping to have an updated validation of the statistic, but early kind of queries look optimistic in substantiating this, right? And validating this to have largely panned out. And so the point here is as skills have accelerated their applicable half-lives, we're faced with the reality that skill churn is part of the evolution that gives focus and clarity vital to upskilling frameworks. So this visual goes hand in hand with that narrative, right? That the new dynamic has really changed and inverted from our recent past. So it wasn't so long ago you could apply the 80-20 rule where you brought 80% of the skills to the job, and right, the metaphorical 20% was part of ongoing development acquired really in the flow of work. And so it may sound radical, but there's this inversion, right, where that's flipped, and it's not abnormal for the majority of the skills you need for a job are acquired through the job. So as we start to look at skills data, right, it's still hard, but there's been a lot of progress. And so easier is being able to detect a job category per established competency frameworks, and then list the relevant competencies assigned to that job in that framework, right? What's more difficult is when you want to get into a broader set of data around specific relationships, knowledge, experience, and skill within the enterprise. And so as it relates to that inverted pyramid trend that we were just looking at, this more difficult approach becomes pretty essential, right? Pretty key. And it may be a bit of an oversimplification, but sensing the relationship between skills helps you find which pre-acquired skills are perhaps more adjacent, right? More in the neighborhood to the likely direction new skills will develop that'll need to be acquired through the job. So when you're facing these kind of challenges, and gig-like models abound, right? You need to go from thinking of skills as broad sets of capabilities that can help people move up or over in a ladder-like approach to a much more complete picture, right? Looking at capabilities which codify much more information about somebody and represent the relationship between knowledge, experience, skills, certifications, right? It's much more of a multi-dimensional, multi-sided graph. So this is where it can be meaningful, right, to go in and check what kind of data or skills standards are being applied when AI is used. Again, perhaps oversimplified, right, but that makes it easy for us to wrap our mind around it. But the more dynamic the skill standard, right, the more it's on the right-hand side of this graph, the more leverage you get out of it to help your organization bridge into that ever-increasing pace of change, right, that is our new normal. So getting it to work, right? One of the key elements to making this automation work is to have much better knowledge about what skills are. And moving from a pick list in a workflow, right? Remember those days, right? Pick what skills you have, right? To moving to something that taps into many more data sources, right? As shown here. You might expect this, but HR systems actually can be really poor data sources, right? For understanding the capabilities of workers. They generally don't reflect more specific experiences that an individual has. So to recap, the benefits of a dynamic skills approach start with this capability to sense shifting skills in real time, right? And then to develop skills at the time of need, right? Through the flow of work, in the flow of work, and then finally to make skills decisions dynamically. And so the combination of these three things working together at scale is the value promise AI for skills delivers. Good stuff. All right, moving on to our second key theme here, dynamic work. So Gartner predicts by 2025, about 30% of relevant providers will create a single talent network connecting what were previously disparate hiring pools, right? Your internal candidates, your external employees, contingent workers, freelancers, and alumni. And so when it comes to retention, right, it just so happens that the top three most successfully applied retention tactics play into exactly this value proposition of the talent marketplace, which really, the reason we're talking about that is it really captures the business problem that is, right, dynamic work and changing work demands. And so increasing work flexibility, learning and development programs for more dynamic upskilling, improving career path visibility and managerial support for career navigation are all value props delivered by full featured talent marketplaces. And they really should go beyond just that internal mobility. So a refresher, maybe how internal talent marketplaces work. On one side, right, there's a variety of different types of work opportunities. On the other, simply, right, you have skills, experience, knowledge, connections of the participating workers, right, which can also be all different types of workers. And so similar to the skills AI tech applied to matching external candidates to jobs, right, ditto here, this more granulated view of pairing people to work opportunities or work assignments inside the organization. As mentioned, right, there can be a variety of different types of workers in your talent marketplace, right? This is the strategic advantage to be able to connect these previously separate and disparate talent pools and sourcing mechanisms into one centralized, more work-to-worker matchmaking framework. So here, just to, again, give a really good flavor of the opportunity types, right? We said there could be so many types in a talent marketplace. So anything from gigs to hackathons to stretch assignments. The idea is anywhere you can define, right, a body of work. It might be outcome based. It might be a team that you want to place all together. But the idea is any kind of opportunity, if you can define it, right, then that sets up the model and the template to start to match talent to that. So to bring it back together, what we're essentially matching is the work to be done, right, with the talent to do the work. But it's something more granular than that job level. So you're really exploring how you define work to be done, and that should coincide with which objective that work assignment template is meant to improve. Is it at a task level? Is it at an outcome level, right? Or like we said, maybe you're experimenting with teams. And so depending on which of those priorities at the beginning of this session, we were saying, can you and are you trying to apply your skills platform to try and improve and move the needle on those things? Well, you might have different opportunity templates for these different priorities, right? You're trying to achieve different things. So it's not a one size fits all solution to what exactly is the work and what you're trying to match talent to, right? It's not just a job requisition where you're more tied to the job. You really can start to get granular and think differently about how you're approaching this idea of matching people to work. Good stuff. So what I like about this slide here is the why, right? So what's key to keep in mind with all the variety of types of work opportunity and types of workers that can be brought into a talent marketplace is really there's two significant value propositions that you want to balance. So on one side, you have development of your workers, right? To meet this dynamic work demands, right? They're trying to meet the needs for the job while in the job. But also you're trying to optimize what your organization needs, right? And trying to get people where they're needed most, when they're needed most. And so the latter being a key attribute of business and talent agility. This is a nice conceptual side on my fearless peer, John Kostoulis, that really starts to maybe illustrate talent agility, right? Or business agility, how it requires talent agility, and breaks down how this coordinated pairing of skills and talent supply is realized by the unification of what were historically these disparate skills and talent pools, right? So bringing together employees, candidates, contractors, alumni, so you have this great pool of people and skills and abilities and experience and connections. And then also on the other side, bringing together how you look at their capabilities, their hard skills, their soft skills, and that matching, right? The more apt you get at that, the more agile you get at that, the more that lends to talent agility, which then as you apply to more priorities that are at the top of your list, at the top of your organization's list, that's what business agility starts to look like. Excellent. So in summary, despite culture challenges, and I'd say some implementation postponements, I've heard from a lot of clients, right, that are, first we're going to do this and then we're going to work on how we layer in internal talent marketplace to really help with our employee experience. Despite kind of those delays, Gartner still predicts that by 2025, about 20% of large enterprises will have deployed internal talent marketplaces to get at this problem and this opportunity that is agility of talent. Excellent. So the last of our key themes to chat about is dynamic network, and specifically what my thought-provoking colleague Helen Pudever calls the worker data platform. And so it's important to note before we jump into this one that worker data platforms are probably the most nascent of the technologies we've discussed, right? But with enough real world momentum to note even in this pragmatic discussion. So what is it? Well, it's probably a lot of what your mind goes to when you think profile, right? Knowledge, learning, projects this person has been on, certifications they've had, preferences, ambitions, attitudes even. And so what's different is the part where it's closer to a person's own virtual data wallet that they're in control of and have, right, validated by trusted data sources, right, what is true, and independent of their relationship necessarily to your organization. And so it's theirs to take this data wallet with them wherever they go and conditionally share in how they see fit, right? But the idea is that data about a person isn't a profile here, a profile there, and before you know it, you have easily several dozen profiles, right, all over. But the idea that that data, that trusted source, is yours and yours to share conditionally with your organization, with wherever you want to go to be able to start to use it. And so data wallets, if you want to call them, worker data platforms, again, can have many useful applications. A lot of them we haven't even defined yet. But I think the best way to really bring this to life a little bit, make it a little more tangible, and maybe that was a good start, thinking of it as a data wallet, but let's take it a little bit further. And I think what helps is to really look at the idea of a person's digital twin, right? And so it may sound fancy or not, but the main value proposition of the digital twin is the idea that when you know more, and not everything, but when you know more about a person, right, and you have more of these select points, the recommendations can be so much more personalized for that individual, right? Again, if you know their aspirations, if you know their preferences, if you know their capabilities, right, in combination with this more holistic, rounded picture that goes beyond just skills, right, you really start to get to a lot more potential of what you can do. And so whether it be health and safety, productivity, our own favorite topic of talent attraction and retention. Digital twins really stand to bring a more meaningful value to so many organizational priorities, including beyond the people ones we started our session with, right? And so data and embedded insights are useful, but the real value proposition here is that being able to grow into perhaps more timely person-specific nudges that move the needle, right? So it's one thing to say, here's a statistic. It's another thing to say, here is something you might want to do, Rania. But it's quite another to say, here, Rania, try this right now because it fits in perfectly with what you're doing and what you want, right? That's kind of a maturation model as things go, but you need to know more about a person. And so we've talked a lot about skills. Skills continue to be part of this third key theme here, but it also can now start to move beyond just skills, more of these data points about an individual. And similarly, the value propositions can go beyond just your people priorities, right? You can start to now bring some of these nudges to change behavior that help with productivity, right? And much more operational objectives and priorities you might have in your organization directly as well. So to recap, we covered 3 key themes here. I know I went through them pretty fast for AI and skills that are already bridging us into the future of work. And so AI skills to respond to the need for dynamic skilling at scale, talent marketplaces to respond to the need of dynamic work. And the most nascent, but perhaps the most potential, right, is being able to have these worker data platforms to enable more of these hyper-relevant and personalized recommendations that can be part of a larger dynamic talent network. Some recommendations, again, I promised this would be pragmatic, right? And so it wouldn't be a Gartner presentation without leaving with a set of step-by-step takeaways from this. And so hopefully you see, if not already using these, but the benefits of adopting a dynamic skills approach, using AI to track and manage, right, your skills information, your matching, taking a look and evaluating your AI skills capabilities, right? How do they ingest and process data? What technologies do they use? And how do they adapt to the terms your organization uses? I think you're also, right, in our conversation around internal talent marketplace, find those teams that are most ready to embrace, right? You're probably, many of you I know I've talked with who are working on proof of concept for internal talent marketplace. Keep in mind, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, right? Depending on what opportunity you're templating and what organization and what problem you're really trying to solve, right? As much as you're still trying to manage that balance between, you know, development of the worker and talent agility for the organization, right? Think of these pilots, think of who's ready to take them on, but don't think of them as one size fits all. There's different experiments you can try. And so if the first one doesn't work, try again, right? Try something else. We didn't talk a whole heck of a lot about bias just because I know it's an area I can go astray and talk, a whole 30 minutes on, but take a look at that data. Based on that data, assumptions, models, and degree of adaptability, monitor that perception and that impact. And finally, keep an eye out, right, for worker data platforms. It may be emerging in your location or your industry. And so keep an eye out as, again, that's a long road. They're not even on the Gartner hype cycle, the innovation hype cycle just yet. But it's something to keep an eye out for. And again, lots of potential there. So last slide here, and perhaps I always love asking the question. I know I ask the question of when I am on the other side of this watching presentation, but what's the one thing that I'm going to take away? And what's the one thing that the presenter really would love for me to take away? And so for you at the end of this 30 minutes, as much as I hope you liked maybe some of those line item recommendations, I'd like to leave you with a little bit of inspiration, right? And that inspiration loops back to the beginning of this presentation to really try a fresh perspective with your skills technology, right? I challenge you to see your skills initiative as more than just another item on that glorified checklist, but rather the platform it truly is. So to enable, accelerate progress on so many of your priorities. And so chances are good, this is something you know to be true. It's a reminder to zoom out and get simultaneously creative and serious with how you milk that skills platform for its full value to you and your organization. So I leave you with this quote. It may not be that you need to do more with your skills platform as much as focus more on how you're leveraging what you already have towards some of these other outcomes on your people priority to-dos as you head into the rest of this year and set up for the following year. So with that, thank you for joining me today. It's my sincere hope you were able to take some useful nuggets relevant to you and the work that you're doing. And I wish you the best of luck. And until next time.